Welcome to Leverage to Build Wealth, where we discuss and educate entrepreneurs, mortgage, real estate, and financial service professionals on how to leverage tools and other people's experience to truly leverage to build wealth, to create the lifestyle and legacy you desire. All right, welcome to this episode. We've got the indefeatable Mike Kortas. He is the CEO of NEXA Mortgage and AXEN and Jet NEXA. We're going to have a pretty action-packed episode today. This one is a personal project of mine that I've had in the back of my mind for a few years now, and it's awesome to see this moment happen for me personally. But there is going to be a very big value for everyone who has the opportunity to watch this. This is going to be an episode of contrast. I'm all about mindset, and those who have seen some of the other episodes, especially with Whitney Hall and others, understand that for me, mindset matters, not drama. You know, as far as what's going on with everyone else is like, what can you do for you and your family and help others to the best you can? And Mike Kortas has helped me personally and professionally. Things he knows and things he doesn't by his example and things that he's done. I have seen a part of Mike that others don't see publicly. I have seen the generous aspect of Mike that he doesn't want shared. I have seen the part where I see the man who is, from a view of a protector, being an Army veteran myself, being a person who has a protector mindset. A lot of people don't understand the difference. Like when they see a protector and they're on the opposite end of that versus those who are being protected by that protector. They see a perspective that no one else does. And in many different ways, I have seen that and received the blessings directly and indirectly of the protective nature of Mike. And so for that, I appreciate and greatly love the fighting spirit that he has. And we're going to understand a little bit more why that is and how he's not just fighting for his family and the NEXA family, but he's fighting for the little guys everywhere. Thank you. With that, thank you for coming on, Mike.
Hey, man, thanks for having me, Tom. So I appreciate you.
We're going to talk a little bit about your story. Give us about 5-10 minutes. And the reason why this is going to matter is because this gives context to what a premise of today's meeting is, which is growth in 2024. How do we go from here? I believe the messenger matters. It's not just the message, because the messenger is the one who crafts the message. If we don't understand that person, we may not fully understand the message. And for as far as credentials, my man Mike here has a PhD from the University of Hard Knocks. I'm going to keep this as G to PG-13 rated as possible, but this man has gone through some stuff. And that influences the passion that he has. So with that being said, Mike, please tell us your story, starting from, say, 16 to when you got into the mortgage industry. Now, I will also reference a link in the about to an incredible article that we will be addressing at some point in here, so people can go into depth and to really dig in. But go ahead, Mike.
So 16, maybe even 14 onward was probably the most influential time in my life. But from 16, I mean, at 16 years old, I was out on the street at one point, right? Staying at home no longer was an option. A lot of abuse, fighting. Previous to 16, there was murders and all kinds of, foster care, all kinds of things in the family that and it became non-productive for me to stay there anymore, even at 16 years old. So I ended up going out on the streets and figuring out how to make my own way at 16. I wasn't homeless at 16, but I was on the streets at 16. I always figured out a place to be and a place to stay. I got put in jail at one point at that age. Custody was awarded to another woman, a phenomenal woman that was helped me out when I was at that age. The courts ordered my mother and I completely away from each other because it was such a toxic situation. And I went and fended for myself at that point. It was a little tough to stay in high school when you're trying to fend for yourself at 16 years old. The only thing that anybody will give you is a minimum wage job, which back then was like $4.25 an hour. which didn't, cover anything or pay anything. And so you had to, there were other things involved. And at those age groups, when you're out on the streets trying to fend for yourself, there's not a whole lot of options for you, unfortunately. Generally speaking, people get into, a number of different activities. One of them being drugs, drug selling, slinging, gangs. Another one being what I went into. It was some criminal activity, certainly a criminal ring, if you will. I'm not going to go into the details of what that was, but and the third one, unfortunately, the worst one in my opinion, would be the sex trafficking, of which I've seen and didn't experience myself, but refused to go that route, and I had to stay away from that. But those were the options that you really had when you're a teenager on the streets. Those are the things that you found yourself into in those necks of the woods where you were at. But I was involved with a ring, if you will, an element that didn't lead me down the right path. There was honor among it, but it certainly didn't lead me down the right path or associate me with the right individuals that I needed to get through life. Either fortunately or unfortunately, those things led me to juvenile incarceration. They locked me up in juvenile detention center. And during that lockup phase, there was some things. Juvenile detention center is interesting. It's not prison, so you don't see shanks going on, but you see a lot of people trying to prove themselves, get some street cred, because most of them are gangbangers, things of that nature. And I'm not going to say that I didn't exactly participate in some of the bad stuff inside there. Mm-hmm. I was oftentimes, in punishment, things of that nature. But the courts then at that stage of the game couldn't figure me out. And so they ordered a full psychological evaluation on me, which unnerved quite a few things for the court systems. And it was discovered that my IQ was pretty much off the chart, 99.5 percentile on the IQ level. And so the judge actually came back about 3.5 months before I turned 18 and had my mother and I in the courtroom and says, "You guys are ridiculous," basically. And the state of Arizona at this stage of the game was pretty much done with us both. And they gave us both the ultimatum and said, "Mr. Kortas, we're going to let you out of here. You need to move on with your life. You need to stop wasting your time with certain things. You have way too much to give. But you got to stop, and you're not going to be on the streets." She goes, "If we find you on the streets in any way whatsoever, we're bringing you back here to your 18th birthday. And that's it."
Wow. And
they told my mother, and they said, and if he ends up on the streets, we're bringing you back as well.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
And so they forced us together, which I don't know was a phenomenal thing. And at that stage, I was still going through some things, still associating myself with folks that I probably shouldn't have associated with, and dealing with some dramas of a girl I was seeing at the time, and then the drama of mom and I just not getting along. And at that stage of the game, I've been on my own for a while, so it's a little hard to throw us back together. The biggest issue that I think we had at that time was the boyfriends, right? The violence and the abuse and these boyfriends trying to tell me. And I'm like, I walk in and this new boyfriend, right, comes in and he's like, "Well, this is the rules." And I'm like, who are you telling me rules? Yeah. Right. And that wasn't going to end. And right or wrong on my part, and I have my wrongs in this part. I'm like, I don't know who you think you are.
No, it's understandable though. Yeah.
And it went south quick in heartbeat, right? He was trying to assert his authority, and I was trying to assert my middle finger. And so didn't go well. And my biggest mistake I think I made to this day in my life was not preparing for the day I turned 18. Is the reality. I was still 17. I was a little, still punk, and not making right choices, associating myself with the wrong people. And I remember my 18th birthday very well. Woke up in the morning. Mom opens up the door, says, "Happy birthday. I love you. Get the fuck out of my house."
Wow.
And so that was the very first day I was actually ever homeless. And so at that point, I go down to the shelters. And at that point, you can't go down to the shelters as a kid anymore. So there's a real hard lesson to learn this day. Yesterday, I could have went into the women and youth shelters, much more friendly environment. Not that it's exactly friendly, but now I'm in the male adult shelters only, right? I can't go to that anymore as of one day separated from each other.
With all those different elements that go with it.
Quite a different element. Right. And I can just tell you there's a lot of, mental illness in the shelters. There's a lot of, homelessness, a lot of crime activity in the shelters. And it was certainly not the place for an 18-year-old little boy that looked like he was 14.
Oh yeah, fresh meat. Yeah.
And so there was some immediate things and, a scuffle there, sexual misconduct type stuff. And so I pop smoke. I ain't ever coming back
Yes.
to a shelter again. Right. And so then I found myself, and I was working at the time. And I was a full-time landscaper at the time. And I'm literally shoveling rock and digging ditches for a living. And I mean, literally.
Yes.
I was landscape installation. So it's good at digging trenches. I was phenomenal at shoveling rock, which was odd for a white boy.
Yeah.
But I hung with the best of them, and I had work ethic in me, and I didn't care for hard work. And I actually enjoyed the hard work. I enjoyed the calluses and all that fun stuff. But I also knew that I was going down the wrong road, and I was in this dead-end job that literally the armpit of all jobs that people can think of today. And I didn't think of it back then. Today I think of it. I'm like, dude, I literally was shoveling rock and digging ditches. Yeah. People talk about that, in metaphor, but it was a real life thing for me.
Yes.
Then the problem was that, okay, well, that job started early in the mornings, right? Because you try to finish off in the days, and that's just
the sun, especially in Arizona.
At the time, it was April, May. It wasn't terrible, but as the summer progressed. So the problem you have there is that you have the entire rest of the day to think of something to do or had to figure out where to be. But homelessness, people think, well, homelessness, guys, you don't have rent, you don't have utilities. It must be pretty, you don't need much money. But it's actually a slightly expensive endeavor because you've always got to be eating out and you've always got to be doing something. You're fighting time at that stage, nonstop. Not like we're fighting time now. Now I'm like, oh my gosh, how can I get more? Then I had too much of it, right? I had too many things, and that's how people get in trouble on the streets is there's too much time, and the mind starts going, and you're trying to figure out where to be, right? And so you would do certain things like pick up a movie and stay for 3 or 4 of them, but sit in Taco Bell forever and eat some hot sauce packets.
Enjoy that air conditioning. Yeah,
I lived on hot sauce packets for a while. But I ended up picking up a second full-time job at a full-service gas station over in 44th Street in Camelback. Nice area of town, right?
Very nice. Very nice area.
And so I would pump gas. It was one of the last remaining full-service gas station pumps, in the valley. There was another one in Scottsdale, but not too far away. But it was one of the last remaining full-service pump gas stations. And you used to have full service all over the place. But we would pump gas, and it was one of the last ones because there was a lot of well-to-do people that would come through. I remember senators would come through, and the governors would come through. I had to do a stop for the governor's Symington's wife at the time, and go and help her. And the Suns players would always come through. Oh, yeah. So I would always work that and close that out to the midnight shift. And at the time, I had a motorcycle that didn't even have first gear, by the way. It didn't have first gear and it didn't have third gear, so I'd have to ride out second gear. Oh my God! Reach down and pull it by hand into fourth gear to get the bike going.
Oh,
and that's just how I lived.
Yeah. And you're grateful that you had the motorcycle. You're grateful that you
it was my transportation, but it was extremely cheap because it didn't take much gas, and so it was very inexpensive to fill up, and I'd get the week, so it worked. The problem with that is that I didn't have a place to sleep. And so I would in the winter, as in the summer times, it wasn't the most terrible thing in the world, but I'd go into the gas station after into the bathroom. It was an Exxon gas station. I'd go into the bathroom and, do my rinse off shower, if you will, and do my night shift. And then I'd go back to landscaping and I'd go back to the farm and I'd sleep in the farm. And they had this cow in this pen that they were raising it for slaughter. It was a calf, but me and the cow would chill together and sleep. And I learned, the desert's very cold, regardless of it being a desert and considered hot, and get very chilly
very quickly.
And then but the hay, I learned why farm animals love the hay because it pads the ground, and homeless people learn this stuff really quick. There's reasons we slept on concrete, not on dirt with cardboards and stuff. And you learn these little tricks of the trade that, hopefully you're not about to use again, but the landscape crew would wake up early in the morning and come and they'd kick me and say, hey, let's go. And we'd get up and we'd go landscape. And they didn't care. They let me sleep in this little farm because it was in the backside. The cops would bother you in the parks. They'd bother you if you were trying to sleep somewhere else. And so at the farm, nobody bothered me, right? And back in the day, anybody who lives in Arizona will know that, you're aging ourselves here, but it was over at 83rd Avenue in Northern. In between Northern and Glendale, and just beyond that was Hickman's Farm Ranch at the time, over by where the Cardinal Stadium is today. Now they moved Hickman's Farm Egg Ranch out, and it was, obviously you had the smell of chickens, had extension chickens, but but that's all right. But it was a good place and nobody bothered me. And I was somewhere where the cops didn't bother me or throw me out, and I could try and, you know, get a nice sleep, because I would get off my midnight shift at the landscape thing, and then I'd be waking up by 5 a.m.
And you're safe. You know, there's no one messing with you. You're safe.
There's no one messing with me there, right? So I learned, you know, a place to go find myself and isolate a bit. So, and the whole experience taught me work ethic without knowing. And at the time, I was like, what do you do? This is life. So what? Who cares? Right. And it was just, you just had to keep going. You know, you're constantly trying to figure out a hustle, right? Okay, well, how am I going to get this? The biggest problem I had at the time was probably that I would end up at the liquor stores or the convenience stores at 18 years old, trying to get somebody to go buy me a 6-pack so I can go back to the farm and just drink myself to sleep, along those type of things. You didn't have, you know, your iPhone where you could listen to your iPods today. You would just be there with your thoughts is all you did. And in the wintertime, it was extra hard because it got cold. I would go to the surplus stores and I'd get a military style mummy bag. So I did have a good military grade mummy bag, but you would turn the engine onto the motorcycle every now and again and get that thing to heat up around you a little bit. Don't touch it, but you would feel the element of the heat with the mummy bag, and it helped out. You know, they slaughtered the cow at one point, but anyhow, I got to a point. You got to remember, this is back when the Phoenix Suns in 1993 went to the finals.
The finals, yeah.
Right, and so and it was Suns Ray fan and all that stuff, and the Suns would come through the gas station. Don't forget. And one night I'm sitting at the gas station, I just pumping gas, right, and I would go and pump full service, and some of the players would come through. KJ would always come through full service. He'd crack his Porsche window down.
Yeah, that black Porsche.
Yeah, and he'd stick his credit card through, and you know, you'd wash his window and check his oil. Not the nicest guy in the word. Actually, I apologize. He stuck cash. He always paid in cash. He paid in $100 bills every single time.
Wow.
Meanwhile, a lot of the players would come through over there and their wives and stuff on the full service side. But then there was always a couple of players that came over on the self-serve side, and I always thought that was interesting. And one night, I give credit to Dan Marley because he did this a lot. But that night, I think in particular, it was actually Joe Klein. And they come through, and wife is in this little sports car in front, and Joe's in his big SUV in the back because he doesn't fit in a sports car.
Yeah.
But he pumps his own gas. And back then at Exxon, I still had to go reset the gas pumps regardless, right? They're not going to put your card in. Okay, how much? Okay, let me get your credit card, swipe it. You know, that was, you still had a gas attendant who had to reset the pump. So I'd go reset the pumps. And, you know, I remember Dan comes through and then Joe comes through. I remember as they pulled out, something clicked in my head. And I said, why? I said, yeah, I'm not 6'7" and I ain't got a jump shot, right? I'm not the most athletic guy in the world. I'm in shape because I'm landscaping like crazy, but but I'm not the most athletic guy in the world. And I'm certainly not going to try and get in the NBA. I said, but these guys, and something clicked in my head that I realized that these guys practice all their lives to get to where they are. Yeah. And there are other people doing the same thing in other aspects of business. And why not me? And I was actually, everybody thought of like, well, hey, Mike's going to be, you know, homeless. Mike's a hobo. You know, he's going to be, you know, this guy that's sitting on roofs, burnt, you know, raggedy skin. I mean, he's 50 years old and all that stuff. That was me. They assumed I would get hooked on drugs eventually because I was already, you know, drinking a lot of alcohol by that point. And so that night, though, I decided, I says, you know what? I says, there's no reason the amount of grind that I put in and my work, I said that I can't do something else, that I can't get into business. And I always had an entrepreneurial mind. I was doing landscape jobs on the side for myself as well. And so finally, I just said, you know what? That's the night that made it, that clicked in me. And as they pulled away, I could take you back to the very exact spot to this day. The gas station is still there. It's named something else, but I could take you to the very spot. And I remember where it just clicked. And this is the spot. This is the moment where it happened. And it was that night, about 10 o'clock at night. And, you know, and it pulled away and I said, I'm going to make a change. And it started that night with not going to a convenience store and asking somebody to buy me liquor so I could drink myself out and then wake up, slightly off keister and just go and sweat it out at the landscaping. I decided not to that day because I wanted to be a little bit more focused. And then in between things, I would figure out, okay, I figured out in between, you know, shifts and jobs and then after how to go down and on weekends, and I figured out how to get into some assisted housing. Right. And I got into an assisted housing place off of 75th Avenue in Glendale. Okay. I think it was 67th Avenue in Glendale.
Yeah.
I could take you there by memory. I can't remember the cross streets exactly.
I can remember.
I think it was 75th. Anyhow, I got into there, and I finally, now I had a place to actually lay down at night, much more convenient. And it was actually, now I could actually have ramen noodles and plastic silverware, and I didn't have to sit there and fend and eat out nonstop.
Yes, that's a game changer because going out's so expensive.
Extremely. And then you don't have to, figure out and sit in a movie theater for 4 theaters long, but I could just watch TV instead for free now, right? So that was a bit of a game changer for me at that stage. And then slowly but surely I started making the right changes, the right moves. And I said, I don't need to be in this spot anymore. And so then I ended up leaving the gas station job and focused on the landscaping job. And the owners of that company weren't the smartest people in the world. That's why we do landscaping, quite frankly. And so I ended up saying, you guys aren't doing this wrong. I says, I'm watching this and you guys are running these jobs and you should be running these jobs. I said, let me look at this. And I did a whole financial analysis and showed them why they weren't profiting on things and they were on others. So they put me in charge of all that. And it was a fun experience for me at 18 to figure out a P&L on each project. And I would go and invoice and bill the customers and go and collect and all that stuff. And so it was an experience. So they ended up giving me an unwritten, verbal ownership type thing, which really was nothing, quite frankly. Okay. But then I started going on. But the thing is throughout this process now, I got a girl pregnant. And so now I'm like, well, this changes things, right? Now it's not just me. I'm not just, me trying to hustle through life here. I got this life that now depends on me.
Yes.
And so I said, well, I need to have benefits. And my buddy was in bill collections. He was in collections at the time. He's like, dude, you got to check out this collections gig. I'm like, collections? You're sitting in a cubicle on a phone with a pen and a computer. I'm like, and I was good on computers. I knew how to type, but I says, what do you, I don't get. I'm like, dude, we're men. We work. It's what we do. I got
stuff with your hands. Yeah.
I got sandpaper hands. What do you got? Softies? Yeah. And he's like, oh, and I'm like, he's like, dude, I'm telling you, I get commissions. I'm like, what? Tell me about this commissions thing, right? And he's like, look, check it out. They give me the minimum wage, but then they give me commissions. That's like twice the minimum wage.
Yeah.
I'm like, let me see that change.
Game changer.
So I go down and apply, and they make me do a test on a computer. And I'm like, but you got to remember, go back to the juvenile days. They let me out of school because of my testing ability, or jail because of my testing ability.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, so I ace this test. And these guys, and I blow this test off the chart, and these guys are like, hey, we need this guy on one of our good accounts. So they opened me right up on an Amex account where other people usually get like an oil account.
Okay.
Collecting gas cards at $50. I'm hitting Amex up with balance of $1,500, $2,000.
Very good.
And then I immediately start moving me up to the gold card, the platinum card holders, and eventually the corporate card. And the corporate, now I start doing business. I'm 20, 21 years old negotiating deals. I'm 22 years old, negotiated a settlement on the Stratosphere in Las Vegas.
Wow.
Right? On their deals. I negotiated some settlements on the defunct arena football teams back in the day. I'm dealing with business people at an executive level, negotiating between them and American Express what we're going to do to get this thing figured out, doing write-ups and reports and stuff. And so I learned a lot at that particular job, but it was a phone job. It was grinding on the phone nonstop, right? And so I brought my grind ability. They taught me how to do work on the phones and talk to people, and figured out how to get through to people and become a friend in a few seconds. So then all of a sudden, I'm starting to refer people to mortgage people, right? I'm like, hey, you got equity in your home? I know how to pay off your $10,000 balance. I can get that money right away and get my commissions on that, as I need you to refer you to these people. So we start referring to people. And all of a sudden, somebody tell me, they said, Mike, you should check out this mortgage game.
I bet those loan officers were loving you.
Oh, they love me. They were look, they were sending me illegal kickbacks nonstop. Some loan officer out of California. Then I met some local loan officers, and they're like, hey, man, you should really check this out. Right? I think you'd be really good at this. And I'm like, but I'm doing good. I'm like 22 years old at the time, making $50,000, $60,000 a year, which coming off the streets, like I'm
life-changing.
And you're talking about 98 here, 97, 98 here. Right? And so I'm like, I'm killing it, right? I'm got my own nice apartment now, raising my boy. I'm a single father at the time, raising my son. He lives with me. Wow. His mother was a loser, so we can go into that later.
And this is Mike Jr., right?
Mike Jr., yeah, little Michael Jr. And so I says, but then they said, hey, Mike, I said, well, tell me about the compensation. How does it work? How much are they paying you? And they says, well, they don't pay you anything. It's commissioned only. I commissioned only. He goes, yeah, but you can work as many hours as you want. I'm like, oh, now we're talking. Because remember, I came from landscaping early, all half the day, and then working the gas pumps all day, half the day. I was used to working, but in the collection agency, it was a publicly traded. They're like, hey, man, you got to clock out at 7 hours, 59 minutes and 59 seconds. We can't.
Yeah. No matter how good you're
pouring. Waiting at the time clock to hit it at the right time.
Yeah. No matter how good you're doing. So like when you're on a hot streak, no matter, you got to punch out. You're done.
You had to. And I was like, this is stupid. So now I'm doing side deals in landscaping still, right? To make extra money like Mike. And then I'm like, well, how much is your commission checks? It's commissioned only. They pay you nothing. And they said, yeah. So they showed me their checks. And I'm like, that's a check. I said, that's one.
And that clears.
And I'm like, oh, hold up. I said, let's talk about this. And so I was like, I got into this commission thing. I'm like, I got to go play this game. And so at this point, I built up a little bit of a 401k. So I cashed it out and I said, that's my money to survive on. And it was hard. First few months of the mortgage industry were hard.
Yeah.
Right. And I had to really grind. And there was a point where I'm almost like, I can't do this, man. I went through my entire 401k. I lost my truck to repossession at that point. Now I'm like, whoa, what did I do? And I almost went back, but then I looked around the mortgage side and I see these people just killing it and hitting at a high level, driving nice cars. And I says, you know what, I'm going to fight through it. And I closed my first loan my 4th month in. I closed my second loan my 6th month in. And then the next 6 months of that year, I ended up closing somewhere near 24 loans in those 6-month periods because of all the work that I put in and I grinded up. And at that time, I went to my collection buddies and said, send me your deals. Right. And they would send me their deals. I'd refinance those houses in subprime and get them up. And so that was a heavy influential thing. And I still to this day, though, I have to give credit to Gary Wilson, the landscaping company, the owner of that company. Yeah. And I have to give credit to Paul Allen, Steve Zeter, my managers at the collection agency, who also became good friends of mine, that taught me how to make money on the phone. And I was able to combine the work ethic of landscaping and the sales skills of bill collecting and combine those into a sales, of mortgages and just grind it out. Now I'm working 12 to 15 hours a day, just grinding it as much as I can, getting at it. And I did really well the second half of that first year. And my second year, I really blew up. And then it just kind of went from there, of course, until the financial crisis. That's another story, but
yes.
So, and I killed it, and I just worked and I grinded and I grinded and I worked and I grinded. And at that point, I'm in my 20s and I'm too young making dumb decisions on the weekends. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. Should have been doing better things, but financial crisis hit. That obviously devastated some things, devastated me. It sent me I've been at the bottom, right? And I went up to what I thought was the top, and then I went back down to the bottom again. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget the day that I came home and I had to tell my wife, and she didn't know because at the time we had another little baby, Isaiah now.
So this is Edna then. Okay.
This is Edna, and she didn't work, right? And so now I come home one day and she was just like, hey, let me take care of the finances, the bills. You just take care of the kids. And she's raising Michael now too, right? I said, take care of the house. And she kind of played the innocent little housewife role at that time, right? Is what was really a factor there. But I had to come home one day. I said, listen, it's over. What do you mean it's over? We're living in a beautiful house in North Scottsdale and got a high-rise office in Mesa that I would go to driving a Mercedes. She goes, it's over. And this is 2008 at this point. 7 really, because we got hit earlier than the rest of the world. And I says, you know what? I says, I got some bad news. I says, there's no money in the bank. Because I got $20. She goes, well, I need formula for the baby. I need diapers for the baby, and I need milk for the kids for cereal. I says, well, and cereal. And I says, I don't have to tell you, you can only get one. And I broke down and I cried that day because I knew it was over. Because we saved up money throughout it. And I said, I'm going to go all in. Financial crisis ain't going to get me. This housing subprime thing ain't going to get me. And boy, it ate everybody up. Right? It just kept getting worse and worse. And I blew through everything. And I should have popped smoke and just held back, but lessons learned.
Yeah. And I feel that, man. I totally feel that.
I don't know what she did, and the kids put water in their cereal, ate dry cereal the next day. But the formula couldn't go without. The baby wouldn't eat if you didn't have the formula. So, and then I figured it out. And at that point, financial crisis hit hard. Nobody was doing mortgages. I couldn't get a mortgage, so I went back to landscaping. People don't know that, but I went back full-time landscaping for a while. I was trying to do side deals and mortgages, but you're only doing a deal a year, a deal every 6 months. And I was a refi guy back then. So all I did was refis, subprime refis, and it was gone. Gone. You had a deteriorating market, so you couldn't even get a house without like 10% down at the time.
Yeah.
There was no 3.5%. Well, I think FHA, but there was deteriorating market, so you had issues. But anyhow, so from there, I ended up growing that landscape company using my knowledge in technology at the time. Technology, keep in mind,
Yes.
we're talking about 2008,
Yeah, the current at that time. Yeah.
2009, and I used the technologies that I knew about and had leverage of to go back into landscape maintenance this time, not digging ditches, but mowing lawns. There was less licensing, and I figured out that I didn't have to do the work. I could be the brains, and I just sold. And then I figured out how to sell from not even being at the location because of my knowledge of real estate at the time and mortgages and how I could get use public records to my advantage. I turned that company into 13 metropolitan cities in 7 states across the South.
Wow.
In about a year and a half, but I hated it because they treated me like a landscaper again. And I was used to wearing a suit and going to work every day, being a mortgage professional.
Yeah.
So to the late 2009, I got back into the mortgage game.
And to that point, there's a real difference in how people treat you. There's a whole different tone of the conversation. I mean, that's a very powerful point because how people perceive you and with the value that you have, I totally get it. That's an important point. So I get that perspective.
Yeah, they just some professional doctor or something calling a landscaper to complain that you didn't pick up the trash in the day. And then they treated you different. It was just, I didn't enjoy that at all. I didn't enjoy the complaints, and we all know that I don't respond too well to that. I was a bad fit, man. Yeah. But this company out of Ohio, and I'm like, I don't even have accounts in Ohio, guys. I was just trying to sell all my accounts off and go back into mortgages. They bought the whole thing because they wanted the system, the technology that I built, and I had a system in place.
Cool.
Automatically quoted people. It was fully automated landscaping. I beat landscapers at their own game because they just wouldn't show up. I showed up to every single quote without even being there. With the greatest thing, it was the easiest thing at the time. Yeah. Anyway, but I hated it because it was the service levels were problematic. So, but I got back into mortgages in late 2009. By 2010, the licensing came out, took care of that. And then from there, I just told my family, I said, listen, I got to change this. I got to change what we are. And by that point, my wife and I adopted our daughter. Well, shortly thereafter, I should say. And then I said, there's too many people who rely on me. I said, I got to make a change for our family that we'll never, ever look back on ever again. And our grandkids will never, ever have to ever experience anything like this again if they don't want to, if it's not their choice, right? Change the legacy. You got to change it. And that's what I did. And I just went into absolute, utter, ridiculous grind mode, which I wasn't unaccustomed to because I'm used to the work ethic. I got the work ethic.
Yeah, you got the muscle.
I knew how to do it, right? The top 2 paid industries in the world, top 2 careers in the world, right? Number 1, professional athlete. We've already established it ain't me. I'm not 6'7". I ain't got a jump shot. I'm not a behemoth of a man. I'm not running up the line with somebody, right? Not me. Number 2 is financial sales. And we found our way into financial sales, right? So we have a massive opportunity. Anybody in this business has an opportunity to make substantial money, right? More than athletes in a lot of cases.
Yes.
More than doctors and
lawyers, everything. Yeah.
Financial sales is enormous, and we're in a position where we can get a license to do financial sales and just grind and be better and work harder than the next loan officer, and we can get there. And that's what I did. And from there, I never looked back. The work ethic has been nonstop, and then the story moves on to NEXA, of course, and then it really blows up. But
yeah, well, thank you for sharing.
That's the long version of from 16.
No.
You'll cut that down a little bit somewhere.
No, I'm not going to cut it down because it is valuable. There is so much gold mine. I mean, this is a gold mine here. Nothing of that deserves to get chopped. It is. So I want to highlight some of these things because when you have the deck, metaphorically speaking, stacked against you, you talked about people, when you're at the gas station at Exxon, where no one's expecting much. And when no one expects much, sometimes people can get to a point where they believe that until you come to a point where you're saying, enough is enough. And what I love is hearing these little moments. I've shared this multiple times and I believe this. Our life is not linear. No way in hell is our life linear. It is packaged in moments that change our life. They can be a comment that someone gives us that resonates and hits us and changes us. It can be something you read. It can be something you experience that's devastating. It can be something you experience that's wonderful. But whatever it is, our life is packaged of these moments. And I believe the true success is to have as many of those moments as possible as we evolve and work towards being better. And what I'm hearing is a lot of these moments that you're sharing with us that are life-changing, that these, like being at the gas pump at Exxon, when Joe Klein, and when you're there and you have that moment and you're like, why not me? That thought changes your destiny.
It changed everything.
Yeah, game changer.
And I took steps forward that day, and I just said, every day I'm going to start taking a step forward. Every now and again, you get punched in the mouth, and you
of course,
steps back, right? But then you just keep taking those steps forward, and eventually those steps turn into 2-3 steps a day, and then they turn into a jog, and then at one point now I'm sprinting.
Yeah, and it's compounding. It compounds, and now you end up creating more moments more often, that it becomes habit, and that muscle memory. And next thing you know, you're having extraordinary experiences all the time. This is one of the things I love following you online and on different platforms, is to see your journey. Because for me, I see a lot of, when I talk to my wife, why not us? Why not? Last night on my date with my wife, we were going to Walmart to grab some things before we went out to dinner, and I was talking to her about why not. I'm like, there's so much that we can do that we're not, because of own inadequacy. It's not because someone else holding us down. It's because of myself.
Yeah.
My own limitations,
Yeah. Mine says a lot of people say they want it, but they don't want it more than they want to watch TV at night. Exactly. Kids say they want it, but they don't want it more than they want to play the Xbox. Right? How bad do you really want it? You said you want it, but would you rather sleep in, or would you rather get at it? Because you said you want it, but you don't want it as bad as that snooze button. You want to hit that snooze button more. You want that more. Right? Which one do you want more? It's all mindset. So, and you said earlier, the mindset about expectations.
Yes.
One thing that I remind people is, like, people say to me, they say things like, oh God, I'm so sorry you had to go through that. I'm like, what are you sorry about? It made me, you should say, thank God you had to go through that, because it made me what I am today.
Yes.
And today I look at it like, I wouldn't change anything. To this day, my mother and I, we talk, and we don't have the perfect relationship, obviously, but she does apologize. And I said, Mom, don't apologize. I said, it was wrong. A lot of things were wrong. You shouldn't have had me thrown in jail on lies, but you did. But you shouldn't have. But nonetheless, it made me who I am. And I'm perfectly happy with now who I am and what I've done, right? But the expectations are something. Because you said earlier, that if people don't have any expectations of you, my opinion of that is, okay, well, they don't have any expectations, then go for it. It's like, a losing basketball team is playing a winning record team. What the hell do you have to lose? Nobody's expecting you to win. Go on a limb and just go.
The ball's out.
Lay it all out and see what happens. Who cares? There's no expectations of you at that point. You should have the easiest chance to win. The expectations are on the other side of that ball.
Yes.
In fact, my son, look at my son, Isaiah Kortas. The expectations, that kid probably lives in a very stressful environment because he's got to live up to this. And him and he competes. Dad, I want to beat you. And I'm like, be careful what you say. And so I'm going to hold you to that. I'm going to hold you to that now. And now I have expectations of you. And he lives with the expectations. The mental stress has got to be strong. My stuff is like physical stuff, right? Sure, mentally that I had to sleep in the streets and stuff and deal with things. But the mental stress of somebody that's so impressionable upon me that I'm going to let down was never there.
Yeah.
I didn't have that stress. Right or wrong, I didn't have that. There was no father figure saying, looking over me, having these expectations. They got those expectations. My youngster's he's got to live with me on a daily basis, acting the way I do, right? That's stressful too. And so I say, the expectation the mindset of expectations is huge.
But that expectations is there is not because you're being a tyrant or anything like that. It's because they have potential and them personally. Them in a way that no one else does. Their capacity and capability. And that's the beautiful thing about being a father, is you're like, I know you have more in you and I want you to have fulfillment. I want you to have to
It's different
experience the
levels.
greatness.
I just wanted to emphasize that, you don't have to, have murdered dads and homeless in jail and stuff in order to do things. If you don't have people in your life who have massive expectations of you right now, you can shock the world.
Yes.
And then, for those people who have those significant expectations by their leaders or their fathers or whatever, right? They have it hard too. And even though like young Isaiah is going to be known as coming up in a nice environment because I've done really well for him,
yes,
right? His stress levels are off the chart. And I like to remind those people listening that, that's hard too.
Yeah.
And you can, and when you overcome that and you grind it out, right, you have something to celebrate as well. It's not just me who came off the street who has something to celebrate and say, look what I did.
Yeah.
It's those people with significant, severe expectations that are difficult to live up to that also have something to celebrate. So mindset is important. Everybody got a story.
Yes.
Point. You know what I mean? And so, and everything is hard. So
yeah. What I love about it, and to help bridge, to the topic, is this fuels you. You can use your past to fuel you, or to for some people they choose to hide. They've Rene Rodriguez talks about this. He says you have the choice to say, "Oh, look, this happened to me," or me, like you've mentioned other people, or you can say, this happened for me. Life happens for me. It's for me to be able to do things. I am this way because of this. And because of this passion of who I am, this is how I choose to view life and how I choose to become and how to choose to live my life. And I think that's the perfect bridge, because so many people can look back and say, oh, the poor me, or they can look at this as being inspired and be like, look at this. Mike's got balls of bowling balls, and this is what he's going up against. Now here's the thing. Success can get in people's way because they get in their head and they forget how they got there. That's one thing I see you're always fighting to push the needle, to push everything moving forward. It's not to rest on your laurels. Right now, you're the largest mortgage brokerage in the history of America. No one has been bigger. You're not settling. You're opening up new opportunities. And what I love about this, Mike, is you're not saying, look at me, I'm better than you. You're saying, look at me, come do this yourself. Follow me. Let's do this together. When you put a post about the Jet NEXA, you weren't saying, look, I'm better than you, you pieces of crap. You're like, come with me. Understand this. Other broker owners, let me show you these things. Let me show you the tax manuals. Let me show you these things. You're not saying, hey, screw you for screw you's sake. You're like, let me help you. Let's move this together. Let's move forward. And that's what I love about your fight for the little guy. And you'll fight the big guys. The elite center industry that people don't talk about, and the ones that they do talk about, you're front and center. I'm there with popcorn. I'm like, all right, let's see what happens now. But in addition to that, I'm seeing progress. Like you had a post just the other day where you said, hey, I got a commitment of being positive, and I'm going to eat some wood on this, and I'm going to be moving forward because some things are may have been taken out of context. What I love about that is, like, what? I'm seeing progress. I'm seeing someone who's passionate, and I would rather follow a passionate lion than a meek mouse. I want someone who has purpose, and I would take the scars of mistakes following a lion than the safety of a prison with a mouse. I'd rather take the licks and say, you know what, hell yeah, let's do this. And you represent that for so many people, both in NEXA and out of the NEXA. And now this, because I'm in financial services, not just mortgages, I want this message to go to a whole lot of other financial professionals and other people who are entrepreneurs who are wanting to be like, you know what? They're tired of getting out of the thumb. They know they have a better way of doing something, or they want to be able to move forward, create a business for themselves. And they need to be able to know, you know what? I can do this. And that's what I love about this, Mike, is the principles of what you're talking about go across industries. It goes across companies. It's about principles.
We're not talking mortgages here today.
Yeah. We're talking about lifestyle. We're talking about mindset, like how to view things. And you inspire people in so many different ways. And you also piss people off all over the place too. And that's funny to watch, but at the same time, it's like when you understand why you do things, why, I think it's a whole different story. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, you never make everybody happy. When you hit like meme status, you've made it.
Yeah.
You're doing it.
Yeah.
When they make memes about you, like I used to bother me a lot when I would wake up, a few years back and people were talking negatively, but I don't even know who they are. And people are posting things about me that I'm like, who are you? And why do you hate me? And then we receive these hate messages and it was crazy how people are so spiteful of somebody who's becoming successful because they're not. I'm like, these people need to look at themselves sometimes. Now though, today, different story. I literally purposefully search for it so I can have a chuckle because I know, and I have a different mindset. It's literally what solidifies that you're either doing it, you're getting there, or you're there, right? It solidifies it. That if this means you'll never make everybody happy. You could literally give everybody in the world $1 million, right? And there's billionaires that are alive today that can legally actually afford to give every man, woman, and child in America $1 million each. They could. But if they did, it doesn't matter. Everybody would be bitching at them because they didn't give so many people. So you're never going to make everybody happy.
Well, yeah, look at the trillions of dollars of bills that have just been put through, legislations and stuff. You're like, wow, we're sending all this money to Ukraine. Okay. And all this other kind of crap, but not to go political. I totally get it. But that mindset is crucial. And with that being said, going to the topic of today, which we don't have to go long into because I think understanding the message and the messenger is really important because you have this incredibly grounded philosophy and you understand why not me? Why not me? Who's going to do it if it's not you? Like, why rely on someone else in that aspect of like to achieve your goals? It's like, why not me?
You can't rely on somebody. It's not going to happen. If you're waiting on your neighbor or your brother, your sister, your mother, or father, it's never going to happen.
Exactly. And one thing that I see when I see you, Mike, I don't see someone waiting for an opportunity. You create them. And not that many people understand that. That's the spirit of an entrepreneur. It's not waiting for the right business. It's not waiting for any of that. It's to create the opportunities. That's the heart of entrepreneurship, is to create things. You don't have to wait for them. As a matter of fact, if you wait, you're not going to be in business long. With what you see in the landscape in the mortgage industry or any other industries you want to talk about, what do you see being the biggest things that people can choose to capitalize on to grow their businesses? Now, you can be specific to mortgages or whatever, however you want to take this, but what do you see as being the biggest game changers as opportunities in 2024?
When you say the game changers and opportunities, you're talking about what should people be doing, or you're talking about
And some people aren't doing stuff. Some people know what they should be doing, but you have a perspective and you work at levels that other people don't even contemplate. You know of issues that people don't even think about, but you also see opportunities that people aren't looking for either. So what are you seeing? Innovation
is interesting, right? And opportunities are interesting because they come when you didn't even expect them. And that's when they come, when you didn't know they were coming. But the reason they come when they come is because you were constantly working towards it. And there's no secret pill in any business whatsoever. Every single successful person out there, every single last one of them are going to tell you the same answer. And God, if you haven't listened to it yet, somebody please take this in, because it's not going to change next year. It's not going to change in 10 years from now. It didn't change 50 years ago, and it wasn't changed when I was young. It comes down to your work ethic. How bad do you want it? Are you going to do it? It's simple. Look, you cannot go out and buy success at the fucking grocery store. They don't have a special at the dealership for motivation. You got to dig in and get it. You got to have it yourself. Nobody else is just going to, Amazon doesn't deliver it. It doesn't. So you have to do it yourself. And if you don't, and it's simple. You don't have to be smart. You can be dumb. And if you work harder than the smart guy's going to work for you. right? You just have to work. You have to grind. And if it doesn't work, change. I see people, loan officers, right? Mike, I made 200 phone calls to realtors today. Not one of them wanted to talk to me. Look, I got some bad news for you. Look in the mirror real quick and say it with me. I suck at talking to realtors on the phone. Because if I call 200 realtors, I promise you I got multiple appointments. Yeah. Same 200 realtors. It's just that person sucked. So unsuck. Learn how to do it. Record yourself. Practice. Gameplay, right? Role play. Talk to your dog is the best role player in the industry. They'll listen to you. And your inflection and your tone will change. The dog's ears will go up.
Yeah.
Oh, this is good. It's phenomenal practice. And it sounds stupid, but it works.
It makes sense. It makes sense.
Literally, you have to practice. And people are like, practice? How do you practice phone work? In the shower? While you're driving? While you're making coffee? When you're eating, thinking about it? Practice. Okay, when somebody says this to me, this is how I'm going to say it. And repeat it. I'm going to say it like this. You say it again. And say it again. Athletes, that's how they do it. Musicians, they practice over and over to get the fingering right. That's how they do it. Same exact small repetitive thing over and over and over. How are you going to say, when somebody says hello, what's your opening line? Practice that over and over and over until it's perfected. You're going to find out that there are some people, when you hear them say hello, you're going to realize how to say the same exact thing differently to different people. Because if you hear someone say, hello, how are you? You hear the voice, you're going to learn, oh, hey, how are you doing? This is Mike Kortas. You put a little bit of swing in there. Uh-huh. If you're talking to somebody who's from New York, you're going to have to pick it up a little bit, talk a little bit faster. That's how they like to go.
Yes.
You're going to learn. And then it's so fast, you don't even realize you're doing it. But then you relate to them a little bit easier and better, or whatever the case may be. You hear little key things that you hear in a conversation, you're going to pick up on. If you practice these things, though, you're so good at it that you can pivot on them. And people don't think about that in sales. I'm like, yes, you got to practice if you get a bad rebuttal, right? And somebody's on the phone with you and somebody gives you a rebuttal or says and gives you a negative thing and you're stuck. You're like, okay, sorry, thanks, and you hang up. What happens in a game if that happens? What does a coach do?
Oh, you get ripped apart.
Hold up. Come over here. And they sit down and they go over it, right? They draw it up. They say, hey, this is what we did. We got to do this. What are we going to do on the next one if that happens, right? When they do this, you got to do this. They're doing this. You got to do the same exact thing. You got to stop. What should I have said to that? Yeah. The guy says, no. I already have a 2.5% rate. Let me be. What should I have said to that? There's a better thing to say to it. And it doesn't matter what it is, right? Sometimes it's just getting permission to follow up again, and that's it. Yeah. Or asking but you've got to figure out that rebuttal to that works well for you. You say, okay, when they say, and then you practice it a couple times, run it through your head, pick up the phone, go again. If you have a chance, they didn't tell you to take them off your list, call that person back. But
so are you telling me to treat your career as a craft and art form and
absolutely.
Not just a science, not just a thing to do, not just a punch in, punch out? What?
All right, well, this is the thing, man.
What?
Right, you said it earlier. NEXA is the largest broker of all time. I had the opportunity to speak of a group of college athletes a couple weeks ago. And I told them, I said, you all talk about the GOAT. Who's the GOAT? Right? I says, in my world, you're looking at it. I am the GOAT. But what are the things? People in my world think I'm freaking crazy. You're recording your calls, listening to how you said the word listening to the translation of it's the little teeny things.
Yes.
Stopping, pausing, calling a timeout, doing something. I got to say this differently, right? I got to do this a little bit differently. Okay, game plan. That game didn't work. I lost that game. Somebody else got that customer or that loan officer from me. I didn't get them. How am I going to get this one on the next one? Okay, I got to approach this one team differently than I approach this team.
Yes.
Right? I got to know how each team works. Like when I go recruiting right now. Right? It's no different than how a football or a basketball team is scouting their opponents. How do I approach that company's loan officers to recruit them? It's different than how I approach the other ones. So I'm going to run different plays. You see what I mean? It's no different. People think like, what? And I'm like, yes, you've got to be that meticulous if you want to be the best at what you do. You have to be. So, but yeah, you got to treat it like a craft. You got to treat. So
I love that.
You got to be passionate too. So
you know,
be the best.
And I would look at that as, you're using your resources. You're definitely analyzing, you're game filming, you're doing these things. And any true professional who takes his career as a craft and an art form understands the need to do that. And ironically, everything you said goes across every market that we exist. Boom, bust, sideways. That work ethic, you expand in up markets, you expand in down markets. You're growth focused. You're using your resources because you understand that you can't take the work out of the equation. And I love that. I love that. With that being said, as we're coming to a close, anyone, I'm proud to be with NEXA. I have my own team, the Atomic Financial Mortgage team within NEXA, and I love it. I love the fact that we're able to grow our business, that we're able to do it our way. As long as we're compliant, we're definitely compliant and we're profitable. We're understanding different ways to be able to approach this. And I love that flexibility that you offer every loan officer here. You're like, hey, you got your style, work with it, make it happen, grow and expand. Anyone who's who sees this and was like, you know what? I either am in the mortgage industry and you know what? I want to work with this type of badass CEO. I want to be able to live in a culture where this is status quo, to push the envelope, to always work, what I mean by work, like always working on yourself, working on your business, always striving to be better, doing it the way that you see fit, that you feel comfortable with, but always like pushing beyond the comfort level. Reach out to me. I'll be able to definitely get you taken care of with working with NEXA. If you want to be able to understand, so you know what, maybe this is an industry because Mike's talking a pretty good game and I promise it's legit. Maybe I'm curious about it. Talk to me as well. We'll get you squared away because Mike has an incredible platform called the Academy to help teach people how to be loan officers. We have standards that we talk about, and you can hit me up on that. I'd be more than happy to get you squared away because this is an incredible organization, and it's a culture at NEXA. It to say it's a job or just a place to hang your license is not. That's not what you get when you're NEXA. You're part of a culture, a philosophy. There's a mindset that definitely helps you thrive here. And Mike, I appreciate you for creating a culture where that is not only allowed but promoted. That you have a right to express your opinion. Now, with that, you better take the criticisms too. And I love that too. I like the fact that I can go to town hall, I can express an opinion and I can have someone counter it. I love the fact that I can express my opinion at the same time, be told, hey, Tom, you got to take it too. And we had that just last week. I was able to express an opinion about something and I was able to have something to help challenge me on that, to expand my vision so I can be better. And I can't think of any place I've ever worked that had that kind of awesomeness. And Mike, you create that culture. And I love that you and Matt have created something wonderful. I'm really excited to see and be part of where this grows from here. It's incredible. But with that being said, how can people reach out to you directly? If they want to reach out to you, if they want to be able to follow you, kind of give us your credentials.
Well, look, always find, Mike Kortas on Facebook or LinkedIn, right? Those are my number 2 social platforms. I'm working on the Insta thing. But reach out to you, right? You got my cell phone. If anybody wants to talk about NEXA, talk to Tom here. Talk to Mr. Bassino. He can get us on a one-on-one schedule. So let's, I'd love to help anybody. It doesn't matter the position they're in, whether they're interested in being a loan officer, whether they're a student athlete, whether they're a mortgage broker owner and just want to know how to do things. I will help anybody. I am not afraid. I give out our trade secrets. I give out our game plan every single day. Yes. I'm not afraid of it because I'm going to execute my game plan one way or the other. And I'm going to encourage the world to execute theirs. I got everything I've ever wanted and expected in life. Now I'm happy just to continuously give back to everybody. So, and
I've seen that, those in the industry, big and small, it doesn't matter. And like I said, when you have a fighter that, this champion that's out there, who's also recognizing other champions, you're able to magnetize them towards you. And I love that. Thank you for for this episode and tune in for more. And it's been a pleasure, Mike. Thank you very, very much, my friend.
Always good to see you, brother.
Thank you for watching and listening in to today's episode. Please like, share, and subscribe so we can strengthen our mission and get the message out to others on how to leverage to build wealth. Who's next?